Welcome to Rethinking Death.life, the podcast where we flip the script on the spoiler alert. Everyone dies.
Hosted by the witty widowed death doula duo,
Kathy Dempsey
and Kim Harms.
We know our way around both life and afterlife prep. We tackle the big questions with humor and heart and a healthy dose of reality talk.
Whether you're planning your epic exit, pondering what's next, or just want to know if death really has a sense of humor, we've got you covered. Because rethinking death might just be the secret to truly living.
Welcome to another podcast session on Rethinking Death.life. And we're excited today to have Edie Remus with us. She is Executive Director of Compassus Hospice, and she comes to us with over 40 years of healthcare and hospice experience. She is so knowledgeable and informative, and I have respected and admired her for many, many years. So welcome, Edie.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
And we are so glad to see you too, Edie. And again, 40 years working with death and dying. And remember, she started at about age 8 to 10, I think, when you
Right.
Yeah, really young. So anyway, so how has working in hospice shaped your perspective on death and dying?
You know, that's a great question because I at least know what I want my end of life experience to be. And I think having worked in hospice, I've been able to help some of my family understand what their end of life experience should be or could be if they are willing to allow that to occur. I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't want to die. Nobody does usually, only for fear of leaving my family and friends and the work that I do behind. But I think that you learn over time what it's like to go through death and at least know it can be a warm and comfortable and pleasant experience as it can be for someone that's ending life. You just have to be prepared for what you want and be willing to tell that to your family so they can support you in it.
Right. Edie, what do you think that society most misunderstands about death?
So I think people think that you can live forever. All you have to do is do the machines and the tubes and those kinds of things. And there certainly are ways that you can extend life. Absolutely, there are. And some of them are very, very reasonable ways. And then others of them are very, actually just very difficult to maneuver through because they require they require so much support externally. And do you really want to die hooked up to machines and lines and tubes and all of those things? And so I think people forget that while those things can save your life, they can also present a lot of issues when you're trying to navigate that world.
Yeah, I know. We have come to the day and time in this in this century that we can extend life for a lot longer than we ever could in our entire history of the world. And so it does bring up a lot of questions. And I'm just thinking, I know this is a controversial topic, but I'd like to know, as we can extend life as for long and prolong it a lot of times way longer. I think there's in 11 or 12 states now, there's the MAIDs, the medical aids in dying.
Yes.
And how do you handle that and deal with that?
So it is not in Tennessee, but it is in Virginia. And we have had a patient who was under our hospice care who chose MAIDs. I'd actually not heard of it before, but we just coordinated her support at home until she was ready to go to Virginia and enter, and her family went there and supported her. It's a very controversial issue. I don't know whether Tennessee will accept it or not accept it in the near future, but I know it is certainly becoming much more um, widespread and available. And it's something that you have to decide how you want to handle that for yourself. What state of condition do you have to be in that makes you think this isn't worth living for me anymore? So I'm willing to try that. It's very individualized.
Right. And I guess if people were interested, they should probably Google to find out if it's a law in their state and what
Correct.
the requirements are. And, I think there's a couple doctors that have to evaluate the patient. And
Correct. There's a psychological evaluation that has to be done along with, they have to be there for, I think, 3 days prior so that they can interview with the staff that are there. So it is a very difficult transition to make, but it is out there and it is available if they want to do it.
Well, all of this involves having conversations. It's so important to have conversations because so many things can happen around a death. So, what do you believe are the most important conversations we should be having about death while we're still healthy? My husband made it very clear he did not want to die in a hospital. He wanted to die at home. And so he did a healthcare directive, and it was very clear. But what conversations should we be having around death while we're still healthy?
If we can get people to talk about it when they're in their 40s and 50s, so that when they get in their 80s and 90s, they know, talk about, do you want to die in a hospital? Do you want to die at home? Do you want to die hooked up to machines? Do you want to try machines for a little while and then come off of the machines if they're not making you better? Do you want to put in a feeding tube? Do you want to do, IV therapy or any type of chemotherapy? What are the kinds of things that you want? And the Five Wishes book is one that is great because it's scenario based and you can fill out, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. A durable power of attorney for healthcare, totally unrelated to all of your other affairs, but it's healthcare related. I have someone that is not a family member appointed to be my durable power of attorney for healthcare. I've told my family numerous times what I want, and they probably will honor that, but just in case, they don't have to. I have someone set aside that can help guide them when it's time.
Right. What role do you think that death education should play in our society?
I would love to see death education much earlier on than it is now. Most people don't want to hear the word death. And so, therefore, physicians aren't comfortable telling someone they're dying. They will often call, a hospice provider and say, "Hey, can you have those conversations?" Well, yes, we can. We do that quite often. We do that quite well. So happy to do that. But I think it's important that families talk about it, especially if you've got parents or grandparents. It's important. What do they want? And don't wait until they're in the hospital hooked up to machines to try to figure that out. Because once you start that life support, it's very difficult to withdraw life support. We are a society that, there's all kinds of legal issues around withdrawing support, even if it's what somebody wanted. Doesn't matter. They're all hooked up now, and the hospital's afraid if they withdraw, they're going to get in trouble for that. So you've got to be very specific if you can be on the front end.
Yeah, and I know when Kim and I were speaking at the Before I Die festival in Albuquerque at the end of last year, they had death cafes, which were started in London years and years ago. And Gail actually had several death cafes while we were there, which just people gathered together. Sometimes they watched a movie and talked about it. Sometimes they just talked about it, but it felt natural and it was interesting and curious to find out how other people, thought they were going to end and what they thought was going to happen after.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've not heard of that. So that's just another way to open up the conversation, which is perfect.
In your experience, we talk about getting, we're going to talk to our families, we're going to get all our papers together, we're going to prepare for our death so that when we go, our families are prepared. But what's the best way we can kind of prepare emotionally for our own death or the death of a loved one. How can we prepare emotionally? How can we prepare so that we can face our death, with calmness and with acceptance, and we can face the death of our loved ones the same way? What's the
I
best
think if
advice you
there's
give?
any discontent, any disheartedness, try to put that to rest, because I can assure you, people will not die if they have a burden on their heart or a burden on the brain that they're not willing to let go of. We had a patient recently, and we could not figure out why he wouldn't die. And turns out he was a very spiritual person. We had our chaplain go in, have some conversation with him, and within 12 hours he passed, and he was comfortable, and but he needed that conversation. So whatever that person is important to them, um, that's what you have to figure out. And that's how you have to help people recognize what do they need to do and how do they prepare for that. Certainly, you need the documents that say who you want to make those decisions. But repeat that to your physician also. Tell him, this is what I want. May not be what you want for me, but this is what I want. So therefore, I want you to honor my wishes.
Yeah, and that is so important. And I keep hearing you say that, Edie, conversations about what do you want and start earlier versus later
Yes,
and have those with your family and have them written down and talk to your doctors. So all of it's this awareness and conversations that sounds like really makes for rethinking death in a different way than maybe a generation or two ago did.
correct. Exactly. Totally different than back in the day. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at how my parents faced death and what they wanted and where they wanted to die, and then it's just very different. For every person, it's very different. So figure that out for them and then honor that. That's the most precious gift you can give someone, is to honor what their wishes are for end of life.
Great. Well, Edie, it has been fabulous, incredible, informative again to have you as our guest today. We really appreciate your time and the information that you shared. If somebody wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
So my email address is shown there. So you can reach me via email, or you can also reach me via the phone. 931-381-4090 is the direct line to my office in Columbia.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Edie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.